Late last year I purchased a Panasonic G7. Love that camera. Absolutely think it's fantastic. And recently, well, today to be exact, I got a G85, which is what is filming me right now. So I wanted to take the time to talk about or to understand the actual hand-holding abilities of the IBIS system in the G85. Because obviously if you hand-hold the G7, it's not going to look good. I wanted to see the differences, compare and contrast each one, and then also I'm using the Tascam DR-10L. So what you're hearing audio-wise is from this, so we can do a little test of that as well. So what you'll see next is me on the G7 hand holding it as if I were vlogging from it. And then we'll see it from the point of view of me filming myself vlogging with a G85. And then after that, we'll do the Casey Neistat special and we'll do the GorillaPod, see what it looks like with the G7 versus the G85. This is me hand holding the G7. I'm using the 14 to 42 kit lens. I'm looking at the leveler here on the screen, and but yeah, this is me hand holding it. This is me hand holding it with my right hand, and then of course audio is all coming from the Tascam DR-10L, which is right here. And yeah, so the settings on both cameras will be exactly the same. Everything Cine D, shutter speed is 60, whereas shooting in 24p, and ISO is 1600 and auto white balance as well. So this is me just walking around a hotel room. It's going to be dark in here. Now it's not so dark behind me. And then there you go. So that's me hand holding the G7. Obviously you can see the focus trying to keep up with me, and it seems to be doing a pretty damn good job. And there we go. Next you'll see the G85. And this is me hand holding the G85 walking around the hotel room. I have the 12 to 60 kit lens on this one. This lens actually surprisingly seems to be very nice, actually quite crisp for a kit lens, which is a bit shocking actually. The 14 to 42 on the G7 is good, but I've noticed where there's some sharpness in the details that I'd rather have. So with the 14 to 42, or the G7 at least, I'll probably be replacing it with a 12 to 35, or maybe just going ahead and getting the 7 to 14. This lens seems to be good for right now, but at some point I would like to go ahead and get the 12 to 60, the Leica, the Panasonic Leica 12 to 60, which is an f2.8 to 4, versus this being a 3.5 to 5.6. So again, this is hand holding the G85 versus the G7. Let's see how well the IBIS is doing on this. And again, settings are all the same. Shutter speed 60, Tascam DR-10L, recording me, auto white balance, everything's the same. 1600 ISO and 24p. Yeah, so there you go. So you saw me hand holding the G7. Now we're on the GorillaPod, which is the Casey Neistat style vlogging system that he uses. Same exact GorillaPod he uses. Great thing, absolutely love it. Great little tripod as well. Walking around my hotel room. This is the G7 14 to 42 lens, kit lens. Audio coming from the Tascam DR-10L. Next you'll see after this, you'll see the G85 and see how the in-body image stabilization holds up to being handheld versus using on a GorillaPod, and even hand holding this versus using it on the GorillaPod. And then in another video, I'll do the comparative differences of the G85 and the G7, see which one's really better. So next up is the G85. Now this is the G85. In-body image stabilization sitting on top of the GorillaPod 12 to 60 lens. So it has the dual IS. So what's happening right now is that it is some lenses and some cameras that have in-body image stabilization. When paired with image stabilization on a camera lens, sometimes they can get a little freaky and go a little nuts. They can kind of work against each other. So Panasonic have come up with a system that actually allows the two to work together. And it only works on certain lenses. Right now the 12 to 60 that they have as the kit lens on the G85. And as far as I know, the kit lens on the GH5 which is a 12-60, which is made by Panasonic and Leica. So, or it's made by Panasonic and it's Leica certified. So obviously this is on the GorillaPod, like I've said before, and the 12-60 seems to be holding up very nicely. Of course, you got those 2 extra millimeters of beautiful visibility of my face. But yeah, again, still recording Tascam DR-10L. Switching hands, we're gonna see how well this holds the focus. This holds everything. You know, I'm looking at the screen right now while I'm actually filming, and it seems to be doing a good job with focus, with stabilization and whatnot. So we're gonna really edit the two and see how they look against one another. Okay, so after editing the footage together from both cameras, handheld and on the Joby GorillaPod, one thing I noticed is that the Tascam DR-10L tiny little recorder here is fantastic. It is a simple lav mic that plugs in, actually screws in the top here. It is an omnidirectional mic. Once you slide the tab over to record, it automatically locks all the buttons. You can't press anything, can't mess with it. I have the mic on high setting. It's very, very good. You can even monitor the audio, and micro SD card, a little USB port to plug it into your computer, whatever. You can mess with the headphone volume, and yeah, very, very good. Has a little clip on the back to actually clip it onto your pants, jeans, whatever. Anyway, after looking at the footage between the two cameras, there is a noticeable difference in the G85, obviously being handheld, and on the GorillaPod against the G7. But the thing I noticed the most is not just the fact that it is better with the in-body image stabilization, but more so the focus. The focus was much more crisp and clear, and it definitely kept tabs of my eye and my eyes and my face much better than the G7 did. So that was very interesting. Another thing I noticed is that the focus on the G7 was better when I was hand holding it than when I had it on the GorillaPod. Very interesting. I don't know why that was. The G85 really seemed to keep up with both, so it seemed to be fine either way. So if you want to use this as a vlogging camera, you easily could. So one thing I've noticed, just hand holding both of them, the G85 feels a little bit better in my hand. There are some differences. Obviously it weighs a little bit more. It is a little bit nicer of a feeling camera, so to speak. It is weather sealed, so that's going to have some characteristic differences with the weight and whatnot versus the G7. The buttons are a little bit different here and there, nothing crazy. The flash is also different, and I don't really use the flash on these cameras. I come from a Canon background, and I have the 6D. That's been my main camera for many years, and the 6D does not have a flash, so I'm perfectly fine using an external flash. Done it before, never been afraid of it. So yeah. So that's right now it's the G85 versus the G7 in terms of video quality and whatnot. Another video I'll focus on the actual differences between the two, just looking at the two.